I came from a kind of quasi-black nationalist background. Writers have to be exposed to the world. Okay, like you can't, you cannot limit yourself to just black folks. That can't be, because you'll only be as good as what you're around. It's like a businessman who says, I'm only going to go into a certain market and ignores all other markets, much to his peril. So there were two strains of thoughts going on in my household. There was a sort of quasi-black nationalist thing. I say quasi because I don't want to take away my dad's own originality. We didn't, for instance, celebrate Kwanzaa. My dad hated Kwanzaa. You know, it's just weird for people who came up like us. But at the same time, my dad was always kind of an iconoclast. Never objected to us playing Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that. Encouraged that. Encouraged imagination. Encouraged exploration. That was probably the primary value, even more than whatever particularly cultural, ethnic outlook I took out of my house. The idea of exploration and imagination was huge, and it probably was the biggest thing that I took out of my house. So when I went out into the world, that gelled and meshed really well with the idea of being a writer. And it quickly became apparent that if you're going to be a writer, you have to not really have limits. You can't be afraid to go anywhere. And that's really what it is at the end of the day when we restrict ourselves. It's fear. I'm not going over here with them white folks. You know what I mean? Like, we talk about it in a bad way, but really is you're scared. You're afraid. That really is what the deal is in terms of what's going on. You can't be afraid if you're going to go out here and compete in any sort of real way. So I had to separate whatever political ambitions I had and commit to something. And once I decided that I really, really wanted to be a writer, there wasn't much room. Like, I have my political sensibilities, but when I'm writing a story, I don't think about it from that perspective. I want to tell a beautiful story. I want people to read it and love the narrative. I'm not necessarily interested in making people into left liberals like me, even though that's what I am. I don't write to convert people. I write to tell stories. That's the first thing. That's the primary thing for me. Everything after that, I mean, if you convert over to my side of politics, great, beautiful. But all the great works of art that I've ever seen that had any sort of political import were always great stories first. They were great stories before anything. I think ideology kills art. I think it kills writing all the time. I think it just completely, completely destroys it. So I really had to make a choice, and my choice was to tell stories. And once I decided that was what I was going to do, the whole idea of being an activist was pretty much shunted aside. Anything like that was going to happen was going to be because somebody was inspired by something. I think back to like Zora Neale Hurston, who in the 20s and into the 30s wanted to write stories about how African Americans were as they actually lived. Scorn was heaped upon her because she wasn't interested in writing about lynching, for instance. She wasn't interested in writing about how segregation warped black people. That was what Richard Wright was trying to do. His idea was to write in such a way as to affect political change. I read Native Son in college and I hated Native Son. This is a terrible book. This is an awful story. Like, the story isn't good. I'm not interested in how he was trying to show the effects of racism. If I don't enjoy the book, I don't care. I was Their Eyes Were Watching God guy. I read that and I thought, wow, this is beautiful writing. Zora Neale Hurston is beautiful writing. This is what I want to do. I want to do something like this. I'm not particularly interested. I mean, pardon, my rudeness here. I just was never interested in changing the minds of white folks. I mean, that wasn't who I wanted to be. And I guess I wasn't particularly interested in changing the mind of black folks either. I just wanted to write a beautiful story. And I thought the truth would emerge, that the universal values would emerge from telling the story.